This is a Trekzone conversation.
Well, welcome to a Trekzone conversation. Very excited today. We're talking about Star Trek books, a topic that's not often covered on the channel, not as much as it should be, and I'm joined today by the authors of two new Star Trek books, Robb Pearlman and Dr. Erin MacDonald. Guys, welcome to Trekzone.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hello again.
It is a thrill to see you both again on the channel. Erin, we spoke a little while ago, seems like forever ago, about your science consulting on Discovery. Robb, you've been on the show talking about your other books as well, and that was earlier this year. An incredible time that has had. Let's start with you, Robb. Talk us through your new book.
Oh, Star Trek, My First Book of Colors is a board book for the littlest Star Trek fan, but filled with Easter eggs for everybody, really. So it's all about the colors in space and the colors of uniforms and all of the fun you can have describing different colors in infinite variety and infinite combinations.
Something that I guess we haven't really seen yet is books specifically targeted at our younger generation. We have Prodigy coming through the pipeline now, so we're really targeting these youngsters and getting in there and getting them hooked on Star Trek at a very early age, aren't we?
Yes, we're getting them young. My first Star Trek book was Fun with Kirk and Spock. Which I really wrote as, for the adult collector, just to have some fun. But I was really amazed at how many people were coming over to me at book conventions or Star Trek conventions and saying that book was their kid's first Star Trek book, or that kid was their kid's favorite Star Trek book. And I was like, well, we got to do more, got to teach the children.
Now, I love the press kit here. It's talking to us about a shiny silver space station, a Gorn green captain wearing a gold lame tunic and brown gauntlets. Very, very exciting. And something, I guess, as adults, we don't really consider just how bright and colourful Star Trek is, especially where it came from, promoting NBC in colour back in the 60s.
Indeed. One of the things that I kind of loved for the original series when I was watching it in syndication as a kid was the bright colors of the uniforms and the different colors of the aliens. I thought that was really striking. And of course, the dramatic lighting was very, very enjoyable for me too. The characters were great, but the visuals that they were able to present. And then throughout their rich history in every series, they've really done interesting things with lights and colors and different combinations. The costuming is just great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Erin, let's bring you in now. We've sort of moving from the youngsters to the young teens, if you will, joining real world imagery with our fictional settings as well. Talk us through your book, Star Trek, My First Book of Space.
This also is targeted for the very, very little ones. But, when Robb kind of approached me with this idea, it was to create sort of like a STEAM companionship. So talking about STEM plus arts. And so having the Book of Colors in sort of coming out with Book of Space, the idea that we can teach kids about space. We talk about, our planet, our solar system, all the different stuff that's out there. But then also having the sort of fun, whimsical aspect of Star Trek be part of that storytelling. So it's nonfiction, it's still scientifically accurate, but all of the little Easter eggs and references to Star Trek can be found throughout it.
And for you, Erin, as a scientist with your PhD, is this kind of critical to get kids at a young age interested in STEM and STEAM to really pursue those careers and advance the fields in the future?
For sure. I think every kid kind of starts out as a scientist. Like, you're discovering the world around you. You're running little experiments and trying to figure out what the world is like. And there are things that just spark imagination, especially when we're really young, and space being one of those. I meet so many people who say like, oh man, I really wanted to be an astronomer. I really wanted to be an astrophysicist, but various other, either life took them in a different direction or they struggled with some of the concepts of it. But I think what is good is if you get that inspiration early and you're able to kind of understand it and see yourself as it, that can kind of carry a lot of motivation through the rest of your life when you might not necessarily feel like you're totally grasping maybe the higher, more difficult concepts, you could be like, yeah, but it's still just so cool and I really just want to study it. And this helps sort of plant those seeds early on.
Absolutely. Now, Jason Kaser, your illustrator on this book, coming up with these images, I guess, what was the creative process behind that? I guess putting some really cool images together with our Star Trek ships and stations.
They did the art for both of our books. So for mine, we found real images. We found real actual images of space, whether they might be composite photographs where we've taken maybe different parts of the spectrum and put it together to make sort of a really pretty picture, or just literal photographs of different planets that we have. I think we have like the 67b I'm not going to try to pronounce it here. Comet. It's a picture of a comet that we have, in that book as well. But yeah, like you said, and then over on top of it, Jason put in so many cool sort of illustrations of different Star Trek ships and different ideas. And I really, and little Easter eggs, a little Klingon ship sort of slingshotting around the picture, an image of the sun, for example. But what I really like about it too is the fact that you are able to kind of delineate like what's a photograph versus like what's an illustration. So again, trying to like, I think a lot of us as Star Trek fans, we don't necessarily think of Star Trek as fiction. It's brought us a lot of family members. These stories are very core to kind of who we are. But in this concept where we're actually trying to like teach some scientific facts, I think it helps just kind of show that there are different lines about like where the stories are coming from versus where the images are coming from. But I particularly love the drawings that they did for your book, Rob, the Book of Colors. They're so cool.
He did such a good job. I've worked with Jason several times before, and he's always a pleasure and a really great collaborator. And he's a Star Trek fan too, which helps.
Always helps.
So always helps. So I just have to say Andorian, and he understands what that is. But sometimes I'll give specific art notes or specific scenes that I think he could drive some inspiration from. And I think because my book is the A in STEAM, we were able to have a little bit more fun with the nonfiction aspects of it, and he could go a little looser in it. So when he was doing the iridescent jellyfish, it was his idea that they were, sort of holding hands and smiling the way they are. And he just did such a great job. Each one of the characters that he illustrated, you can see they have their own personality, but they're true to Star Trek, and they all seemed really accessible and colorful too, which was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what I love about these books, and I guess targeted for the youngsters. They are going to be bright and colourful, and really drawing us in. Is it just for the youngsters, or are there some little bits and pieces in these books, guys, that adults might get a kick out of as well?
I
think there's a lot. Yeah, I think every page is going to have something for the adults in
it. For
sure.
I've had a few people reach out and just be like, I bought this for my grandkid, but actually I really like it, so I'm going to buy another one for them. I'm keeping this one.
It was really important for us to make this a whole family experience. So anybody who picks up the book, who even has a passing knowledge of Star Trek, can appreciate what's in them.
Yeah, and even to the extent that even though these are board books, I've heard sort of from friends who have kids who are maybe like sort of 6, 7, where they're reading and they're expanding their own vocabulary, that they really like going through these because it's big words, that there are words in here that are, they're poetic, but they're also kind of like nebula is a cool word to learn when you're a kid. And you don't see that all the time.
Yeah, we put in a lot of words with the intention of starting conversations. We were talking to some people, and it's like, is nebula too difficult a word? Is iridescent too difficult a word? And we were all pretty much in agreement, like it is a difficult word, but in context it works. And the point of these is for conversation to start talking about space and what these words mean and pointing to things.
And as Star Trek fans yourselves, what's it like to have to dive through the entire collection of Star Trek as it is, to find these little nuggets for the kids and come up with a book that is short but sweet? There is so much Star Trek. I guess I'm trying to ask the thought process behind the images that you've chosen.
For me, like being able to put in little Easter eggs, not just visually, but also in the language. And one of my favorite pages is talking about how some people think that there's coffee in a nebula, but this is actually what they're made of. And, so having those little Easter eggs, but that's not hard for me just as a Star Trek fan, because I hear nebula and I think of Janeway and the coffee and slingshotting around a sun and like all those other sort of references that we just have baked in our minds as fans. But I know, Rob, you live in this puntastic world of Star Trek.
I do. It's my own little quagmire, but I'm in there. Yeah, writing a children's book is not the simplest thing. There could be only 50, 75 words in it, but you start with a manuscript that's twice, 3 times as much, and then you whittle it down and whittle it down and whittle it down, and making sure that each word means something. Each word should be there, sort of getting out the stuff that doesn't necessarily belong there, but also allowing, in my art notes, working with Jason to put in those little visual Easter eggs that don't need text or explanation, but are still there as well. This is my 6th or 7th children's book. And I'd like to say it gets easier with each one, but I think if it gets easy, you're not doing it right. So I like the challenge. When the books were being written, we had this amazing collaboration, and I was like, well, maybe we should describe, what dark matter is. Yeah. And Erin was like, we can't. So I'm like, well, we can try. And she was like, we can't. And I was like, Erin, we can try. And she's like, we can't.
We don't know what dark matter is.
Got it.
That's for the young adult book to explain.
That's why I'm doing the A and you're doing the STEM. I get it, okay?
Exactly.
What about a standout moment? Let's start with you, Rob. A standout moment from your book, probably your best highlight that people should catch.
Oh my gosh. Here's the book. I don't know if you held that up before, if anyone see it, but and there's space. I think the standout for me is maybe the ending. Because it's the universe contains a variety of infinite diversity of colors in infinite combinations. And that's kind of the heart of Star Trek for me.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Erin,
yeah.
What about a moment for you?
I mentioned the nebula one already, so I can't say that one again, but I actually really, and I do love the Klingon ship, but I also love, I don't know if we're going to be able to see this, but we have a page on exoplanets, which has a great little solar sail ship.
The virtual background. I love it.
Yeah, no worries. But it's got a nice little artistic drawing of a solar sail, the Bajoran solar sail ship from the Deep Space Nine episode Explorers, because it's about exploring our other star systems. But what's really cool about that, and as Rob said, a lot of the motivation is to kind of start these conversations. When I get to give talks about astronomy and how it relates to Star Trek and how they're all intertwined, one of my favorite things is we do actually have solar sails now. This was a concept that was thought of in the 70s as a way to explore nearby star systems.
Yeah.
And that was incorporated into Deep Space Nine, and people have been working for years, and only, 5 or 6 years ago now, they achieved first orbit of a solar sail. So a spacecraft that's fully powered just from radiation from the sun, being able to adjust its own orbit. And so it's just so great. For me, again, it's that's such a deep cut, and no one's really going to make that connection. But I just personally love the Bajoran solar sail, and how, we, humanity here on Earth, we start to step towards that future technologically. I think that's really fun.
We just need to find some tachyon eddies in our solar system so that we can go faster.
Exactly. Well remembered.
I love it, guys. It is absolutely awesome to catch up with you. Your two books are out now. My first book of colours from Rob, and my first book of space from Dr. Erin. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I really appreciate you being in. And hopefully people get out there and catch those books in all of the best book resellers out in the world, I'm sure.